Holistiplan presents Tax Time with Jeff Levine. Let's talk taxes. Hello, I'm Roger Pine from Holistiplan, and I'm here with Jeff Levine. He is the Chief Planning Officer at Buckingham Strategic Wealth, also a member of our team here as our tax planning strategist at Holistiplan. Jeff, good to see you.
Good to be back with you as always, Roger.
Yeah, for sure. And what we're going to do this week is talk about something we promised to talk about last week. We did a kind of a bigger, broader, new tax proposal thing last week. Today is now November 8th. And one of the things that you valiantly attempted to explain on that call with hand motions and lots of great explanations was what we see as a new tax torpedo or tax gotcha. What do you call these things?
Yeah, another artificially high spike in marginal rates. Yeah, whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
I've heard tax torpedo. I don't love it, but I love the alliteration. That's fine. But there's a new one potentially if this S corporation treatment for net investment income tax comes into being, which it looks like it very much will happen. Mm-hmm. There's a new one that we'll have to contend with as financial advisors. And so this is something that we promised to take a little more time to show. So Jeff, before I share my screen, because we worked up a couple of examples in the system, do you want to at least explain what's happening with net investment income tax and S Corp income, potentially with the new tax law or the proposed tax law?
Yeah, absolutely. So at a high level, let's start with the fact that almost all types of income are subject to either employment taxes or the 3.8% surtax, the net investment income tax, the 3.8% surtax that applies only to net investment income. All those are the same thing, right? But income applies to one of those, or though one of those is applied to just about every type of income. So wages, employment taxes, self-employment income, employment taxes, right? Self-employment tax versus FICA, FUTA, et cetera. But at the end of the day, employment taxes. If we look at things like interest and dividends and capital gains and distributions from non-qualified annuities, all of those are subject to the 3.8% surtax, the NIIT, the net investment income tax. Only a very, very small select group of income types evade both. The two most prominent ones that we deal with as advisors are, one, far and away, distributions from retirement accounts. That would not be changing. But the other one we see quite frequently is S Corporation Profits. In fact, for a lot of folks, that's the driving force behind setting up the S Corporation in the first place, is to pay yourself your reasonable salary, and then everything above and beyond that that's taken as profit is able to avoid employment taxes. And as we said, right now, the 3.8% surtax. This proposal would, for high earners, change that. So for single filers with income in excess of $400,000 and for married couples with income in excess of $500,000, you would begin to have your S Corporation profits considered investment income. That's the easiest way to think about this. Technically, the law calls it a little bit different, but it has the same effect of treating your S Corporation as net investment income and subjecting it to the 3.8% surtax. There's a $100,000 phase-in where this happens, but during that $100,000 phase-in, you go from having none of your S Corporation profits subject to the tax to having them all subject to the tax. And that, as you'll see shortly, I'm quite certain of, can create some really funky spikes in marginal rates that can actually increase someone's effective tax rate to more than 50%. And newsflash, there is no 50% tax rate, right? We talk about 37% being the highest rate right now. Looks like it's going to continue to be the top bracket going forward. But you can have high spikes in marginal rates due to the phasing in of certain surtaxes, or in some cases, the phasing out of certain deductions or credits like we see with QBI. This would be just another one of those examples of a tax torpedo, as Roger mentioned. Right. So yeah, that's a solid overview. I think this will become a little bit more clear as you see it on the screen playing out in front of you in the Holistiplan range calc is a great way to look at this. So Roger, with that, I'll turn it back over to you to take us through the next steps here.
Okay, well, let me try to share my screen here.
Looking good.
Okay, my screen is shared. Okay, well, we've never actually done much in the system on these calls that we've done. But yes, this is the scenario analysis screen within Holistic Plan. This is where we can build what if scenarios. And what I've done here is I first of all created a base case where I said, this is a client who is married filing jointly. And we're going to look at current law first, because I want to introduce this range calc screen, which will help us kind of visualize what we're talking about here, which is actually how I don't know about you, Jeff, but that's how I really discovered that this thing was even, this Tax Torpedo existed and was potentially pretty major for some people, was actually this visualization tool. I hadn't worked it out in my brain that that's a thing that would have happened. So what we did here is joint return, $200,000 of wages, and then $200,000 of S Corp income. And that's all we did. So $400,000 of AGI. And what we're going to see is, I'm going to run this range calc. Here we go. What range calc does is it basically runs the tax calculation over and over and over again in $1,000 increments. And it checks to see how much did the total tax change in essence. And that amount that it changed over 1,000, so if it changed by $320, for example, over 1,000 in movement, that's 32% effective rate. And right here, this is pretty simple. Like they're in the 32% tax bracket. We jump up to the 35% bracket after, I don't know, $54,000. Let me show you what's happening on capital gains. Similar thing, we're in the 15% bracket. We're also over the limit, the AGI limit for net investment income tax. So any capital gains that we add, again, we're adding $1,000 of capital gains, is first tax at 15% plus 3.8, and then at 20% plus 3.8. So that's the way it is today. And so notice there's nothing to do with the net investment income tax on S Corp profits. And so then what I did was, let's take the same exact information. I just copied that one forward, but then I said, let's use the latest proposed law. And I'm going to run this range calc again, Jeff. And what we're going to expect to see is, once we add $100,000 of AGI, we're going to hit that $500,000 MAGI limit, where suddenly our S Corp profits start to become taxable at 3.8%. But, and this is the thing you were talking about, this is the torpedo piece, we have our S Corp profits phasing in over the next $100,000 of income. And since I had $200,000 of S Corp profits, all of it taxed at 3.8%, as $200,000 phases in over the space of 100,000, it's effectively 7.6% in extra taxes that I've added on here. And so here we go.
It's no longer really the 3.8% surtax. It's the 7.6% surtax in effect over that phase-in range.
Precisely, yeah. And then of course, once I hit that range, once I get over that, then adding another $1,000 of ordinary income, not of adding S Corp. It's important to know, like we're adding just ordinary income, like Roth conversion type income here. Adding another $1,000 of ordinary income, be it through a Roth conversion or whatever, at that point would not add more S Corp net investment income tax treatment. It's only adding more S Corp income, which is not what we're showing on this graph. We're showing like essentially ordinary income. But that's a good point, is like all this thing cares about is income. It doesn't care if it's capital gains or ordinary income or whatever. And so actually, if you look at the capital gains graph, the same thing happens there. If I were to realize capital gains through an asset sale or whatever, I had that same 3.8 plus 15% as before, but now I'm layering on that 7.6%. So effectively, I have over this range 11.4% of net investment income tax happening as that S Corp profit is phasing in. And so this is a pretty major, even just adding capital gains beyond a certain point, effectively being taxed at 31% there. For an asset sale, that's pretty hefty, right?
Especially when it's something like a stock that maybe you can delay into another year, or you can do some tax loss, or you have some control over that, right? If you were the advisor, you would not want to put the client in that situation in all likelihood. And I think another good point worth noting here, Roger, if you scroll back up real quick to the ordinary, I think it just makes it a little bit clearer to see.
Yep.
But one of the things I'm very I'm very passionate about talking with advisors when it comes to tax planning is high spikes, large spikes in marginal rate are things to be concerned about, but it's oftentimes these bigger plateaus
Good
of
point.
raised income, raised tax that are big issues. So you can see here, this isn't like okay, over the next $7,000, you're going to have this 7.6% extra tax rate. It's $100,000 of a plateau where, I mean, it's not like Roger shows you here, well, after you add another $100,000, your income effective rate actually ends up dropping back down because it's just the ordinary rate. No longer do you have any more 3.8% surtax, in this case, 3.8 times 2% surtax to add. But at the same point, you've got to get through $100,000, right? That's a big push through to see that rate drop down again. And so you really want to be mindful of those long, large spikes in what is really a plateau, as opposed to like a sharp increase and then a sharp decrease. The plateaus often have a bigger impact on total extra tax that a client would pay.
Yeah.
Right? It's like an old calculus problem, right? It's the area under the curve, so to speak, that I know I just lost everybody. They said, calculus, we haven't done that in 25 years. But effectively, that's really what we're looking at, is the area under this curve that actually matters. That is the tax increase itself.
Right. Yeah, you mentioned that, Jeff. And sometimes in the early days of this particular screen, this range calc screen, I would say to people, well, this is the first derivative of the tax bill because it's the rate of change of the tax bill. And I don't think that landed with many people. So I stopped
what,
using.
You're saying that people weren't interested in hearing calculus and tax combined, Roger?
I stopped.
I can't believe it.
I don't feel like that really helped explain it too well. It's a good point about the plateaus. A good example of a spike is something like Social Security phasing in. So like if someone's in a super, super low bracket, it is
Medicare
true.
Part B premium, right?
Right.
That'd be the ultimate example. $1,
right.
Huge spike.
Yeah. But it's true. Like once you've blown past that, for whatever reason, like it's possible that next 30, 40, $50,000 would still be at the 12% bracket or whatever it is. And so over the entire, you're right, the area under the curve is really the right way to think about it. Over the entirety of that strategy, if you know that client's in a very low bracket for just 2 years, you might live with the fact that you've brought more Social Security to be taxable versus not. So that's a good example of a spike that's usually narrower. I'm going to put together actually a whole presentation of every single tax torpedo that we know of. That'll be for another day. But yeah,
we'll
there's
work
a lot
in
of
the
good
quadratic
examples.
Formula somehow into that build. So you want to keep, we're going to do math and taxes together with everything.
It'll be very popular, I'm sure. So Jeff, let's show one super scary one. All right. I'm going to show a super duper scary one. So this is, I did $100,000 of wages. Okay. And then I put $400,000 in the S Corp piece. So here we're going to have 400,000. First of all, our AGI is now $500,000. So we're immediately going to get, when we pull up range calc, we're going to immediately be at the phase in range for this tax.
And also right on that cusp. Yep.
Right. And also we're going to expect to see 4 times 3.8%. And also just because the total income is higher, we're probably going to already be in the 37% bracket. So let's just see what that one looks like. This is the one where I think we'll see it over 50%, the total effective rate. People don't like when I say at the margin because marginal tax is a different meaning for us. But yeah, here we go. So 4 times $400,000, 15.2. And then we're in the 35% bracket. So that puts us over 50% effectively for that next dollar of income. This would be an expensive Roth conversion to be doing.
Yeah, and you're seeing a 15.2% surtax effectively as opposed to the 3.8. And by the way, again, this is a conversion. Imagine someone who had just a better year in business and had $100,000 more of income. Now it's another 3.8% on top of the 15.2. It'd really be closer to a 19% surtax, 3.8% times 5 over that $100,000. And again, that is a big, big plateau, not just a spike, but a big, big plateau. So you probably want to avoid that. as an advisor if we were looking at Roth conversions. The area under that curve, Roger, is pretty
Yes.
substantial.
And we didn't show in this one an example that we could have worked up is what other phase outs are happening around the same place. And one of them is the child and the dependent care credits, right?
Yep,
I mean,
yep.
those phase
Especially
out
for single filers where that
right.
threshold is 400,000 to 500,000.
Both in the same place. Yeah,
there are a bunch of things that kind of phase out at the same level there for single filers as well. So yeah, you could actually see spikes of close to 60% at the marginal at the federal level, which is kind of scary.
Yeah, and back when I'll stop sharing my screen in a second, but back when we were looking at the new capital gains rates and the highest marginal ordinary income rates starting to phase in about $450,000 back in the last proposal, not in the current one, not in the current proposal, but the last one. When I was showing these charts to people, I mean, we were easily getting over 60% because now we were in the 25% capital gains bracket phasing in. It was crazy. It was a lot going on at once. So anyway, this is just a new tax torpedo people have to be aware of. There are others. And like I said, I hope to do a full list of all of them so we can see them all in action. I think the range calc screen really helps to kind of break it out so we can see, okay, wait a minute, why is it over 35% in this case? Where's it coming from? What's phasing in, what's phasing out? So that's the story there. Jeff, I guess one question I have is any particular planning strategies we can look at as planners to either mitigate this, as now that we're aware of it, what can be done besides just watch AGI and make sure you don't artificially push a client over the edge?
Well, that's just it, right? It's watching AGI and paying special attention to that area. And, look, if you're at that area or slightly over, it's doing whatever you can to drop it down and reduce it. So it might be perhaps adding another, retirement plan. Maybe you're an S corporation owner and you institute a profit sharing plan as opposed to, a simple IRA that you had before. Maybe you do a defined benefit plan, right, to get you back down. I mean, it's that type of process that you'd want to go through. And certainly if you're under, then just be mindful of not doing something to artificially push yourself higher. So look, at the end of the day, the goal is pay taxes when your rate is the lowest. When you're at a 50% marginal rate on the federal side alone, your rate is not the lowest. So find another time to pay that tax. That's really the end of it. That's the big picture here.
Yeah. Well, great. Well, I think we covered it, Jeff. Anything else we missed on that?
I'm looking forward to the quadratic formula. I still got that stuck in my head. Roger.
So ready.
Come on, let's do it. Those shirts, we're going to have, you ever see the people with the shirts with the quadratic formula printed on them?
And I think you and I travel in different circles, Jeff. I don't see those people. Yeah. Well, good. This is good.
Let's do it. Yeah, we'll same time, same place next week, Roger?
Absolutely. We'll do it. Thanks, Jeff. Take care.
Take care.